Hi, everybody. Welcome to our DT sharing today.
Hi, we're covering Second Timothy today. All right, so I think the first thing I was thinking about from this passage are, the different commands that Apostle Paul tells Timothy. And he says in verse 6, fan into flame the gift of God. And in verse 8, do not be ashamed. And then he says, share in suffering for the gospel. And then he says in verse 13, follow the pattern of the sound words. And then finally in verse 14, he says, guard the good deposit. And so I started thinking about why he says, fan into flame the gift of God that is in you to Timothy. And I was thinking, what is that gift of God that he's referring to? And I was just reading through some commentary, but some of the commentary was saying that he doesn't say exactly what it is, but so it could be kind of broad. But I was thinking about, how it seems to be a pretty significant moment of faith for Timothy. It's a spiritual gift, maybe a realization or some kind of commitment of faith that he had made. And, so Paul tells him, fan that into flame. And I was thinking about why he says that. And I was thinking, this is true that we need to fan our faith, especially into flame, and commitments that we've made. All of those things need to be constantly fanned into flame. Actually, almost anything important in our lives need to be fanned into flame. Relationships need to be fanned into flame, and things just don't thrive on their own. And I was thinking about my commitments to God. I needed to fan that into flame all the time. And everything in life, mundane life, really tries to dampen these realizations and the faith and the commitments that I've made. And so it really takes a lot of intentionality and effort to fan into flame the faith and the truths that I once committed to and that I knew to be true. I have to keep fanning that into flame or else they will die. It will fade. And so I was just thinking about how, why he commands Timothy to do that. And then in verse 7, he says, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control, and how that relates to fanning into flame the gift of God. And I was thinking about that relationship between fear and how, fear has definitely a way of dampening our faith and zeal. And there's that direct correlation. And we're bombarded by fears constantly. We're always thinking, that's what fuels our ambitions and our hedging for the future. And how we need to, that much more like battle against the fears that we have and fan into flame the zeal and power and love and self-control that we committed to. And I was thinking about what helps us to do that. It's love, like he says, God gave us a spirit of love and power, self-control. And oftentimes when we're driven by love, we are able to push against fear, and there's that verse in First John where love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. And it's just that relationship between fear and love, where love is what drives out that fear. And we need to, fan into flame those things, and how love will help us to drive out that fear. So those are some of the things I was thinking about with regard to that.
I think the other part of this passage is, as Ellen was talking about the fear, this word actually, it also means cowardice, or, in NIV it's timidity. But as Ellen's saying, what's the opposite of fear? It's love. And I think who's the most courageous person that we know? It's, moms. And they're the most courageous. And it's just because of their love for their children. They're willing to do anything. So, never get between a bear and her cub, right? That a she bear and her cub, how dangerous that is. And I was thinking about, like, a lot of us, us included, that we are timid, we are fearful, and we are cowards in a lot of ways. And but I think sometimes what we give into that voice too often, and we don't see what we're missing on the other side, is when we actually, what's the result if we actually take that step of faith and we say hi to that person, engage that person, share the gospel, strike up a conversation, fly here like we used to do, is there's a possibility for that person to hear the gospel. So our obedience, which isn't dependent on how we feel, but we obey and we go walk across the room and say hi or connect. That unlocks the possibility for this person to hear the gospel, and then actually that's how we develop courage. Courage isn't, it's not like those people who jump out of airplanes and do bungee cord jumping. Like, they just have something missing in their genes, they just have a lack of fear. But, our courage comes in the face of fear. So just want to encourage all of us, because I don't think any of us out there is just super brave or courageous. I mean, maybe some of us innately, but I think it requires us to step out. And that's how we develop courage, by taking those steps of obedience. I just want to wrap up with the final thought here on what Ellen was saying, the last command, guard the good deposit. And I think this might summarize most of Second Timothy. Remember, this is Apostle Paul's last letter to Timothy. He's in prison and he's passing on the baton to his cherished disciple here. And what does he want him to do is guard. And I was just thinking about what does it mean to guard something? You have to protect it. It's very active. It's not a passive thing. You have to be on the lookout and to watch out for it. Also, guarding it means you want to make sure it stays intact and it's pure, and maintaining purity and not letting it get tainted or messed up. And I think that's a big part of what Apostle Paul's worried about here, as he passes on the gospel to his disciple, that his disciple does not mess with the purity of the gospel. And yeah, it seems like, okay, of course not. But yet I think this does happen. And I was thinking, how does this happen? And I think it happens when we hear God's word and somehow we want to soften the blow at times, or we want to reduce the demands of what the text might tell us. Like Luke 9:23, it's as if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself, take up his cross daily. And we're like, well, maybe it doesn't really mean like deny everything, or we want to, reduce the demands of discipleship, water it down, make it more palatable because we're afraid of what people might think, or we're too extreme, too intense. But I was just really challenged because Apostle Paul is saying this here in prison. And, this whole text really crescendos in verse 12 where he says, why I suffer as I do. Why is he suffering in prison? He's not ashamed, for he knows whom he has believed in and convinced that he's able to guard until that day. Because he knows that there is heaven. And that this whole text really crescendos there. That's why he has confidence. That's why he believes the gospel is so important and it's potent. We can't let it be tainted in any way and doesn't want to minimize it. And I think later we'll see in chapter 3 how he's also worried about people who want to hear just what their itching ears want to hear, and how the gospel can be reduced and lowered in that way. And so one thing I thought is, after we're saved, we're not just saved to continue to, we don't just go up to heaven, right? And this is part of it, guarding the good deposit entrusted to us. And later we need to pass this on to reliable men. So that's the call for us, to guard it well. All right, that's it for today.
See you later.
Bye.